All right, good evening, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank everyone for showing up today. It's great to see all of you here. Really great. I appreciate everyone showing up. Today, I'm going to be discussing my experience in coding and development and my journey to creating my latest self-hosted app, AllThoughts, all without ever taking a single formal coding class or without a computer science degree. So let's get started. My name is Richard Browning. I've always had an interest in technology ever since a really young age. But like I said, I've never taken a formal coding class. I ended up beginning with development, and I sort of never stopped to this day. I did go to Ozarks Technical Community College for information technology infrastructure. I was there about 2 years because I wanted to pursue a career in systems administration. But for those of you beginners who maybe aren't as into technology, systems administration and development are two very different fields. So I've always had interest in development as well. I also recently started a new job doing IT support and systems administration at Lauren Cook Company, and I'm the developer of AllThoughts by OzarksMade, which is the app I'll be talking about this evening. So let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about how it all started. Back in 2018, I started developing Android apps using Sketchware on a Samsung Galaxy J3 Luna Pro. And Sketchware is actually an app that allows you to build other apps from within it for the Android platform. And I did all of this on a phone with no prior coding experience, no internet connection, and not that many resources. So let's talk a little bit about Sketchware, the original version that is. Sketchware came out probably about 10 years ago. And what it is a visual IDE for developing Android apps. As some of you might know who attended Dev Night a couple of months ago, we had a wonderful speaker who spoke on visual IDEs. You might remember that. And what Sketchware is this a visual IDE that allows you to drag and drop components in order to build Android apps. So you don't have to write a single line of code. You can compose your XML, your Java, your variables, and all of your assets, all without writing any code. So let me give you a quick example. In an Android app, if you want to switch from one screen to another, you're going to use an intent. So in Sketchware, you can do this with these two simple blocks. You don't even need the middle one. But if you're going to do the same thing using Java, this is the equivalent code. And some of you might be thinking, well, that's not that bad, right? It's only 3 lines. Well, the thing about it is, to get to that actual point, it takes much more code because you have to think about maybe 20 import statements, you have to declare all your variables, you have to initiate your classes, so it's going to be way more than just those 3 lines of code. But for a different example, a lot of you have seen dialogues. It's like, are you sure you want to delete this? Yes, no. And so this is how you would compose a dialogue in Sketchware. But if you're writing the actual code in Java, that would be the comparable equivalent. And that is slightly more complicated than the previous example. And like I said, you have to think about import statements, declaring variables, and all of that. So Sketchware really can be a time saver, especially for beginners. It doesn't require any prior coding knowledge to start, and there are lots of room for growth in the future. But enough about Sketchware. So I began coding with this block programming, which is comparable to Scratch. But my first experience writing actual code was with a Discord bot I created named Bixby, which is totally not a knockoff of Samsung's Bixby virtual assistant. But I coded and hosted this on a Samsung Galaxy A20s. Yes, on a phone, you heard that right. No computer involved, and no prior coding experience either. So this was put together with Node.js. It's a real lightweight, beginner-friendly library. And of course, the name was original totally. So how did I pull it off? 3 tools actually, Termux, QuickEdit, and obviously my Samsung Galaxy A20s. But let's talk about these tools. So I do have a quick video clip on the board of Termux, and for any of you who have worked with Linux before, that might seem really familiar. So basically, Termux is an Android-style terminal emulator. So maybe if any of you have Windows and you've installed Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL, this is a lot like that. And it allows you to install packages and use a lot of the commands that you're already familiar with if you've ever touched Linux. Because if you remember, Android is based on Linux. So this tool makes it extremely easy to run Node.js projects straight from your Android device. And that's exactly what I did with it. So most of you have probably used Visual Studio Code on Windows as your primary code editor. It's a very great tool, but if you're developing on Android, the best tool in my opinion, of course it is an opinion, but I tried several different code editors, maybe 20, 50, literally every code editor I could find in the Google Play Store. And QuickEdit is truly amazing. It has your tabs on the top, so it's super easy to navigate between multiple open files at once, traverse directories, all sorts of things. You have tools on the bottom. It really is the closest you're going to get to Visual Studio Code on an Android. So now you might be thinking about hosting. What is the right answer? I could host in the cloud, I could pay to host, I could host at home, I could use Azure, a free solution. What is the right answer? Well, spoiler, there is no right answer. Because the thing about hosting is it's all about your use case, right? So if you're just starting out and you have something small, then hosting at home or maybe even on your phone, that could be totally fine. If your app scales up and it's a more popular app with high traffic, then you might want to consider a server, multiple servers. Maybe at some point you're even going to pay to have it in Azure. So there really is no right answer when it comes to hosting. It's more about use case and what's practical at the time. So what did I try? Obviously, first I hosted on my Android phone. I eventually moved to free cloud hosted solutions because I didn't want to pay GitHub, Glitch, Replit, even Render. The cool thing about those is you can host for free on all those and you don't even need a credit card. Of course, there are limits on like how many requests per month, of course, but it's really great, especially if you're just starting out. I eventually moved back to self-hosting once I got into systems administration more and began hosting at home with a computer, server, proper port forwarding, and network equipment. And the important thing to know is I learned something from all of those. So if you find yourself changing hosting methods frequently, don't kick yourself in the butt for it. You know, just think that you're moving through stages. Your app requires different resources at different times as it grows, and you're learning something from each stage. So it's really great either way. So after that, I decided to discontinue the Discord bot and move to developing websites. And the great thing about that is websites use HTML and JavaScript, but I already knew JavaScript from the last project, so I only had to teach myself HTML, which wasn't too bad because that's also a beginner-friendly language. So I bought a domain and started a website. One thing I would like to say is your first design doesn't have to be great. Remember, it's just version 1.0, right? So it'll improve over time. As you learn more concepts, and you continually revise it. My first design was actually based on a template, and it looks awful in retrospect. The modern OzarksMade.net is much better. But the cool thing about the template is I could read the source code on the template and actually learn HTML, then throw away the template and I could build my own website. So there's not even anything wrong with starting with the template if you can learn something from it. But wait a minute, we're not here to talk about all of that, right? Isn't there something else? So my next project was AllThoughts, which started about 4 years ago. And I'm just going to be incredibly blunt. The first version was extremely awful. So let's just not even look at that again because it's awful. But the important thing to remember is it's a learning experience. So you have to think long term. But the problem with that is you don't know what long term is yet. You might think you do, but no matter how much you plan for the future, what you have to remember is your project will always scale beyond what you can plan for. I'm not saying you shouldn't plan ahead. Planning ahead is absolutely recommended. Try to plan for the future, but just know you're not going to think of everything, no matter how hard you try. And if there's one place it's appropriate to overthink, it would be development. I'm telling you, overthinking will definitely pay off as time goes on. And please, comment your code. Don't make the same mistake I did, because what you're going to realize if you don't comment your code is you're going to come back to your desk a few months later after taking a break, and you're going to look and open Visual Studio Code and say to yourself, did I write this? Did I? Really? Is this going to happen? So take that extra time, spend those extra few minutes, and properly document your code, because you will pat yourself on the back for it later. Don't create messes now that are going to end up costing you time later. And also, don't be afraid to explore alternatives. Sometimes switching methods can take more time, but if in the long run it makes your code more efficient, go for it. Case in point, this is an example of a thought on the first version of AllThoughts. And on this one, you have two things to consider. Obviously that's fake, Google's not actually on the platform, but you have two things to consider on the first version, which is the name of the user and the thought content. Now let's fast forward to the latest version of AllThoughts, and you have 12 things to consider for each thought. So you have your attachments, your content, is it deleted, ID, so on and so forth. And that's just an example of something you're not going to be able to plan for in the beginning. You're not going to think of every single property that you're going to add to your JSON string in the beginning. But that's okay, that's all part of the process. Refactoring is natural when it comes to a project. Just try your best to think ahead. User objects, they didn't even exist in the first version. And actually, this presentation was made in June. I've updated the app about 3 times since then. So this object is even longer because now there are notification preferences. It probably wouldn't even fill on the screen. And that's just not something you're going to anticipate on the first day of making a project. So just remember that you will have to refactor as necessary. And you saw the example on the last slide. Thought objects only had 2 values. Now they have all these values and more since making this presentation. So here's some more useful knowledge I learned so you don't have to. Like I was saying, some refactoring with growth is natural. You're never going to be able to think of everything, which is normal. But don't let that stop you, because the more you anticipate, the less you will have to refactor. Remember, it might be a little bit of extra time now, but it can save you a lot of headaches in the future if you just try to plan ahead, because you won't regret it. And also, I'd code for years on regular phones, and then I got this beast. You're not going to believe how being able to have 2 apps open at once changes everything. I just thought I'd mention it. So far we've covered the web version, the back end. I've talked about some helpful tips, lessons, some advice from my experience. What about the apps, right? Isn't that what we want to talk about? So, introducing AllThoughts for Android, created with the original Sketchware and Sketchware Pro. So basically, unfortunately, Sketchware got deprecated by its developers. I believe they ran out of funding and abandoned the project. But thankfully, another team of developers kept the project alive and released it as Sketchware Pro, so it has a lot of new features now. So here's an example of the second major version of AllThoughts for Android. Not that good, right? It just doesn't really cut it. But here's how it looks today, which today was a month and a half ago, because I took that screenshot back in June. It's even changed more since then. But here's how it looks today using Google's Material Design 3. And that's just an example of what I've been saying all this time. It's progress, not perfection. You're not going to have a perfect app on day one. It's just not going to happen. But don't let that stop you, because with enough time, enough patience, and enough dedication, it will turn better. Find out what works and stick with it. But another thing I would like to mention is developing definitely isn't customer service, but it might as well be, because you're not going to have all the great ideas on your own. You have to listen to your users. Many features you see in that screenshot right there were not my ideas. I would go out, ask my users, hey, what would you like to see next in the app? Hey, have you experienced any issues with the app? And that's what you have to do. It's like if you're writing a paper, you're not going to be able to proofread all the mistakes yourself, but if you hand it to someone else, they will be able to find the mistakes. It works on my machine, right? You're never gonna see the bugs yourself as a developer, but other people can help with that, so don't forget that. But there's also an iOS version, right? I mean, yeah, introducing AllThoughts for iOS, but how in the world did that happen? Because we all know I don't like Apple, right? So why did I do this? Well, AllThoughts for iOS was born about a year ago when I was actually telling a coworker about the app, and I was like, yeah, so since you have an iPhone, just open up your browser and go to the website. And she was like, well, I don't want to use a website. I hate websites. I want an app. I was like, well, I don't know how to build apps for Apple. Sorry, I'm an Android guy. But 8 months later, I apparently got bored and jumped in and learned Swift UI all on my own. I'll never say anything against taking a formal class, but sometimes the best way to learn is to just jump in and learn as you go. It's really a really fun and rewarding experience. It's definitely trial and error, but you won't regret it. So I started Swift UI with Xcode and Swift Playgrounds. Fun fact, Swift Playgrounds is awful, so I just jumped right into Xcode and created a new app. ChatGPT can be really helpful at explaining new concepts. Don't try to let it do all the work for you. You still have to know what you're doing. But if there are some concepts you don't know, you can ask it, and it can be super helpful. I learned that with Swift UI, you have to combine your logic and your user interface in one file. So coming from Android development, I'm used to having your Java and your XML files. Well, Swift isn't like that. It's what they call a declarative approach, which initially really stumped me, and it was confusing. But what I learned over time is the declarative approach is really great. I'll talk about that here in a bit. And of course, trial and error is a natural part of the process. This screenshot you see here, I actually remember staying up all night just to achieve that. Building the network request controller just to fetch the data. User interface was not a concern. It's the raw JSON unparsed. So trial and error is always going to be a part of the process, but if you stick with it, and you will achieve your goal in the end. So some of you may have done development using Java for Android. Some of you may have used Swift for Apple. Some of you may have done both, which that's great. But for those of you that haven't, I've done both. So I'm going to try my best to give you my unbiased key takeaways after using both. Obviously, I initially thought Swift would be tough to learn. And I found out the problem with that was I was trying to compare Android concepts to Swift concepts. So like, I'll tell ChatGPT, what's the equivalent of a Java file in Swift? What's the equivalent of an XML file in Swift? Well, that's the wrong way to think about it. When you're learning a new language like this, you need to jump in and learn the new concepts. But trying to compare the old ways you're familiar with honestly makes the situation more confusing. But about that declarative nature, it really is beneficial and efficient, especially when you're writing the code. It's nice. The changing the variables instantly updates the UI. So that definitely makes me declare Swift a winner over Java, which makes me sad, but sadly it's true. Then I learned about Jetpack Compose, which we're going to talk about soon. because that is basically Google's response to Swift saying, hey, we can do it too. So I'm going to discuss that a little bit later, but first, let's think about this. I had an iOS app ready. Big deal, you all can't install it on your iPhones unless it's in the App Store, right? It's not like Android, you can't get apps from unknown sources. So show of hands, who thinks it got approved the first time? Show of hands. Nobody, that's right. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, or 4, or 5, or 6, or 7, or 8, or 9. And look at the dates on those. October 1st was the first time it was submitted, and that 9th rejection was on January 12th. But let's just think about this for a moment. Most of what they rejected it for I thought was very silly, but that's beside the point. I spent hours and hours building this app that I was passionate about, and I was not going to allow Apple's rejections to stop me. So no matter what they rejected me for and how silly or unclever it was, I told myself I was going to fix it and I was going to get it approved. And the 10th time, it got approved, almost 3 months later. So just remember that if you decide to go build an iOS app, don't let the rejection stop you. Keep trying, because eventually it will get approved if you work hard enough. But I was talking so great about Sketchware, so why did I switch away from it to Android Studio? Well, it was convenient and it was a stepping stone. AllThoughts for Android probably would not exist without Sketchware. But the problem is it was so limited. For example, you couldn't even edit the build.gradle file, you couldn't edit the Android manifest. It's really great for beginners, and for any of you who do not have any prior coding experience, I would highly recommend starting with Sketchware before you just maybe jump into a Java file and you're like, this is awful. But that doesn't mean you should bash Sketchware. Just think of it as a stepping stone. You'll outgrow it like a piece of clothes. It's there for a reason, but you'll outgrow it. And outgrowing it should be a milestone, because what you'll realize is once you outgrow Sketchware, you have enough skills to confidently move to Android Studio. Oh, and package management was highly limited, which is why I ended up switching from Sketchware. When I decided I wanted to add notifications to AllThoughts, it would not work because one of the packages was outdated and there was no way to update it on Sketchware. So I was pretty much forced to migrate to Android Studio, and at least then I could actually inject code directly instead of being solely reliant on blocks. So let's talk about some negative effects of Sketchware Pro and why it doesn't really matter. I did learn less code and grew more dependent on blocks while using Sketchware, but that's beside the point because now I know the code after moving to Android Studio. What's more irritating is Sketchware crafts immensely messy code. When you think about the concept of how it has to be able to code any app you build, it's going to have a lot of unnecessarily messy boilerplate code that is an absolute menace to maintain. And once you export your source code from Sketchware to Android Studio, you will see the mess, and it's a nightmare to maintain. But that being said, I wouldn't be where I am without Sketchware Pro, and AllThoughts for Android might not exist. Plus, like I was saying earlier, Kotlin Jetpack Compose might just be the future anyway. After Swift's declarative approach, I ended up researching Jetpack Compose, and I found out I'm doing it the old school way. Apparently, Google no longer recommends building a new Android app with Java and XML. The recommended way is now to use Jetpack Compose, which is their declarative approach similar to Swift. But no, in spite of what that says, I do not plan on migrating all my code over because that sounds like an awful task. Just saying though, if you're starting a new project, you might want to consider Jetpack Compose, especially if you've used Swift in the past, because it utilizes and leverages that same declarative approach. So do you want to start coding? Have I persuaded you yet? I hope so. Here's some resources I recommend. Obviously, if you're on a phone, I already told you about QuickEdit, Termux, and Sketchware Pro. On Windows, you're definitely going to want Visual Studio Code. There are other code editors out there, but Visual Studio Code is really amazing. And it's just top-notch. It's made by Microsoft, so of course it's going to be top-notch. Node.js is a super beginner-friendly way to start building apps and even backends. The AllThoughts backend runs on Node.js, and it's really great. It's easy to learn, especially for any of you beginners that are out there. Node.js is super beginner-friendly. And of course, if you're on Windows, why not use Android Studio? After all, it is the official way to develop an Android app. For Apple products, yeah, there's really only Xcode that's Apple proprietary. There's not really any other program that I know of for development that you can only get on Apple. But for developing iOS or any Apple products, you do need Xcode on a Mac OS device, which is really unfortunate, but it's the way it is. So for hosting, like I was saying earlier, there's GitHub, Replit, Glitch, a lot of good options, free options, don't even need a credit card, especially if you're just getting started. Great ways to host. Or self-host if you have the resources, the time, that's another great option. Like I said, it all depends on your use case. Here's some of what I've learned from building AllThoughts, and what most of you probably know already. Code breaks often, so you have to be willing to fix it. And yeah, users are never going to use things the way they're meant to be used. It's just a fact. You're always going to have to explain things. That doesn't mean you should lash out on the users, obviously. But just keep in mind that if you have to over-explain it, maybe you should consider making it a little bit less complex. Every feature in your app shouldn't need a tutorial for a user to figure out how to use. And like I was saying earlier, feedback is everything. Without feedback, AllThoughts wouldn't be anywhere near where it is. Feedback is very important. You have to listen to your users. You're not going to come up with all the ideas on your own. You have to listen to your users, and they will give you that feedback that you didn't think of on your own. So let's talk about AllThoughts as it is today. The QR code and links are up on the board there, as you can see. I've also passed out flyers to a lot of you guys. Highly recommend downloading. But this is not exactly a latest screenshot because I did make this presentation back in June. But this is AllThoughts as it is today for Android, and it's now coded in Java and XML using Android Studio. So AllThoughts no longer requires Sketchware, or relies on Sketchware, I should say, like it has for the past 4 years. AllThoughts for iOS, there's a screenshot of it finally. Again, that one's back in June, it's not latest. I have added some really great new experimental AI features to AllThoughts since I took these screenshots. They are in the beta phase, but you all should try them out and find out if they're resourceful. I'll be happy to take any feedback on the new experimental AI features that AllThoughts has. And then, of course, we've got AllThoughts for the web. It's great if you have Windows, or even if you just want quick access from the browser. AllThoughts for the web is really great. And another thing I really like about AllThoughts for the web that I'm going to show you here is that it doesn't have to run in your browser because it is a progressive web app. AllThoughts for the web can be installed on your device, whether it is Windows, Android, Apple. AllThoughts for the web can be installed as a progressive web app and run standalone. So make sure you definitely check it out. AllThoughts for the web is great too, but the apps are even better, so make sure you don't forget about the apps. Then we've got AllThoughts for Galaxy, which is probably not going to happen. That was supposed to be a unique version exclusive to Samsung Galaxy users and running a One UI theme. But the way One UI is more proprietary, it would be much more difficult to build an app based on One UI. So as I said earlier, the backend is fully coded in Node.js and hosted on my server at home. I'm confident that it can support as much traffic as it will be receiving at the moment, even it being it is running on Node.js. And it actually has an entire file-based database, which might sound quite shocking. A lot of you might be like, well, why aren't you using SQL or something? Maybe in the future, but for now, it fully runs as files inside of folders on a Windows NTFS file system because Windows is great, so why not? And obviously, it's going to be hosted on Windows as well. As long as I'm in charge of it, it will not be hosted on Linux. So yeah, proud to say that. So download today, check it out, give me some feedback, and I really hope that you all are ready to start coding. It's something you can start today. Start when you go home today. You don't have to wait. You don't have to go to Best Buy and buy hundreds of thousands of dollars of devices just to get started. You can literally start today. It's not complicated. Some beginner projects, you could build a simple website. If you have products and services to showcase, you could put them on that as well. You can even get some domain names for free if you don't want to pay for a domain name, but honestly, they're not that expensive. Mine is about 12 bucks a year, so domain names are super reasonable. You could build like a private database app for only people you know. Maybe something like AllThoughts, but only for in your private circle. But how about all those times I've heard those people say, I wish my phone could do this. I wish this app existed. Why doesn't someone make this app? I want it to do this. Well, that someone could be you. All of you out there could be that someone. That app that you always wish existed. Go home and start building it. You won't get it done today, but you'll get a head start, and it'll get better and better the more you update it and the more you improve it. Like I always say, you don't need to build the next Google or the next Facebook or the next anything. Just build something. Start small, and over time the progress will definitely add up. So what's next? Obviously, the road ahead for me and the app, I plan to remain in the IT field, always keep up with the latest technology because technology is great. And I plan on continuing developing AllThoughts and adding features to it that users request. Don't hesitate. Email the support email. Let me know what features you'd like to see next. I'm always open to suggestions for the app. It can't all be about the ideas I have, so if you all have ideas, please feel free to let me know. I want to hear those ideas. And obviously, grow the app one user at a time. Each and every user that joins is a valued user. You all are important, and you all make the AllThoughts community what it is. Without users like you guys, it would be a much more boring place to be. And like I've said many times, you can do it too. Don't make excuses. Don't say it's too complicated. Don't say it costs too much money. You can probably literally do it with the equipment that you own right now. If you have curiosity and time, that's all you need. This is my setup, and you don't need that. You don't need to go pay hundreds of dollars for that. The reminders is wonderful for coding, but if you're just getting started, you don't need that. You don't need an enterprise-grade rack like I have if you're just getting started. If you end up really enjoying it, it turns great, then eventually you might grow to that, but you don't have to let that intimidate you because anyone can start building something amazing today. Like I just said, it comes later. You won't have that on day one. So just get started. What are you all waiting for? Literally, there's nothing to wait for. You can get started today. I'd like to thank everyone for showing up today. It's really great to see you all. Really, really wonderful. And I'm happy that everyone showed up. I really appreciate that. I hope that you all have not just learned about my app, but also learned about some valuable things in the coding and development world. I know that maybe some of you out there are beginners and not seasoned professionals in development, and I hope that I've inspired you all to go check it out and start building something amazing. So, questions, thoughts, ideas? I believe Levi here is going to be passing the mic around, and I would love to hear all of your questions. And while he's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put my code up on the screen for you all to see.
Thank you.
There we go. So yeah, I would love to take any questions that you guys have.
Thank you for the presentation. So what do people express that use the app? What do they see as the value of that? That's the first question. And the second question is, so this is like a hobby, or do you plan to monetize it anyway?
So I feel like people that use the app really value it because of its size and how it's unique. It's not like big apps. For example, Facebook, it's really big, it's really boring. You have a huge algorithm controlling what you see, and it's just too much. I feel like my users appreciate my app for the unique qualities it has. And also people really appreciate that if they have a question about it, or they have a feature request, or they have a bug that they find, they know they can come to me, and I'll do the best I can to get that taken care of for them. When was the last time you tried contacting Google? Yeah, it's not going to turn out very well. And then about your second question, it actually is monetized in sorts. If you notice, AllThoughts has in-feed ads in between the posts. I believe it's every 5 posts. And one thing I've always said is I will not make full screen interstitial ads that pop up in your face. They have that annoying countdown where you have to wait 5 seconds to close them. I wouldn't do that with my app. But it does have unobtrusive in-feed ads which do generate revenue. So yeah, thank you for your questions. Who else?
Can you hear me? Oh, yes, you can hear me. First of all, I just wanted to say that I was very impressed with your presentation, and I really enjoyed hearing about your story. One of the things that I was wanting to know was more about your personal motivation to go on this learning process that you did. Obviously, you work in IT, doing systems admin. You seem to be very happy in that. But you have jumped both feet into the world of development as well. So if you don't have professional aspirations for development, what's been driving you to look into it so much?
I think mostly not only am I creating something that I enjoy and that other people enjoy, but it's also a productive way to spend time. Everyone is naturally going to have free time in their lives. Some people occupy it with things like video games, for instance. I hate video games, but I love development. So I think it's one of those things where you find out there's something you enjoy, you grab onto it, and then a bonus with development is you actually have an end result. You build something in the end that you're proud of and that you can see other people use, and that enjoyment is just really great. Yes.
Checking. All right, thanks. So I'm curious, how fast can you develop on Android? Like, do you use any peripherals, like a keyboard or something to help you out, or do you just with your thumbs?
Yeah, so before I would like to mention, I didn't actually do this that often, but Samsung DeX is really great. So you can get a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, and then if you have a wireless TV or any monitor that supports Miracast or an HDMI cable, if you have a Samsung Galaxy smartphone, you can basically run a desktop environment that's almost like Windows. Back to your question though, that's not what I use most of the time. Most of the time, I just use the phone And before I bought my Galaxy Z Fold 6, which has a much bigger screen, it was just a normal phone, which is much more narrow. But what you realized over time is you get really fast and efficient at typing on the keyboard. And I would only want to do that on Android because Android keyboard has press and hold keys for symbols. And for anyone that's ever developed, you know you use symbols constantly. Parenthesis this, that is always a symbol. If you were trying to do it on an iPhone, you'd have to switch to the symbols every single time, and that would be a nightmare. But on Android, you don't have to do that. So it's actually pretty quick. Most people think of it as a nightmare, but it wasn't a nightmare at all for me. It was really great. Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Any stats you're willing to share around like the scale, like how many users you might have, or things like that?
For sure. I can show that right now. I've got it pulled up here live. So AllThoughts has many different views than its main view, obviously. But if you go to the AllThoughts menu here, you can go to All Thinkers, and you can view the list of users. You can sort by last join, last active, or first name. And it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It looks like 12 of those users are in fact new and just joined tonight. But this is actually the complete list of users sorted by last joined. And one of my favorite things is that you can also see who's active on the app last. If you go last active, you can see the times that people are active on the app. I also plan on creating more analytics in the future because I feel like that could improve the quality of the app and refine how people use the app as well. And then of course there are the all new AI features, which are really fun. It's basically a personalized view of yourself created by AI, so you all want to check that out. It is still in the experimental stage, of course. Other questions?
Let's see here. First off, a compliment. This presentation was awesome, and it certainly lights the fire in my heart. Like, wow, development is really cool. I want to continue doing that, and I'm already someone who mucks around with code on this. What was the first time where you were diving into a project and you kind of realized, oh, but I'm going to have to refactor my approach to do this, and that's okay, and that's just how software is. It's so powerful and flexible and malleable, and you can just kind of keep renewing your approach and keep going places you thought were impossible. What was the first vista that opened before you in that? Do you have a good story for us?
Yeah, so I think actually the first time there, which I can demonstrate a little bit here, but the first time there, was probably with the first version of AllThoughts. It was basically reliant on 2 JSON files, one for an array of all the users, which were represented by objects, and then another one for the array of all the thoughts, which was also an array of objects. Once I got to so many, I realized that that was definitely not a scalable approach, which was when it began time to refactor. So now the back end is much more scalable, and instead of just having 2 JSON files, every single user has a separate folder with their own files in it. And the same with every single thought. It's got folders with individual files that represent them. You have properties files. Let's see. Users have all these different files. So I believe that was several years ago, and that was when I realized that my current approach was definitely not scalable at all, and that I did indeed need to refactor it and make things much more organized and scalable. Other questions?
Yeah, I was just curious on how how long do you spend in either developing a new part of your app or editing existing parts of your app as it gets bigger? And as you get further into the iterations, how big of a cascading problem is it for you to tackle the first iteration? Because, you know, I did it so well this time, but now, the first one, I got to fix that one up.
Absolutely, that's a great question. And I feel like that really depends on what else I'm doing. So obviously, when I was taking classes or now that I'm working, I have less time to work on it. When I'm more free, I was actually getting to the point where I was releasing a new update every few weeks. But one of the important things I would like to know, I mean, most apps have a team of developers. For this app, it's just me. But anytime I decide to implement a new feature, I have to do it about 4 times. For example, when I added the AI, or when I added the notifications a few weeks ago, I had to add it on the Android version, I had to add it on the iPhone version, I had to add it on the web version, and then I had to add support on the back end. So it's like every single new feature or iteration, it's not a one-time thing, it's a do it 4 times, which definitely adds to time. But it all depends on how much time I actually have to work on that update at any given point. Other questions?
I got another one.
Yeah.
What were some of the silly reasons that Apple denied you?
Oh, yeah, so I remember one of them, which I believe I can actually show you that one. So on the About page here, it looks a little different on the app than the website because this is HTML. But on the apps page, it shows all the releases, AllThoughts for the web, for Android, for Galaxy, which doesn't exist, and for iOS. And I had that same page on the iPhone version. Well, apparently it violated their terms of service because it said the word Android on AllThoughts for Android. So referring to platforms other than Apple's is apparently against the terms of service. So I had to make it AllThoughts for other platforms instead of for Android, which that was really great. Another reason that they denied me, which was actually a lot of work to fix, is AllThoughts initially only used sign in with Google to log in. That was the only way to log in. Well, apparently, according to Apple, that is not secure enough. So apparently, Apple thinks Google doesn't know how to invest in security. So they said that if I wanted to use sign in with Google, I had to also use sign in with Apple to give users an option that, quote, valued their privacy. So apparently, you guys, sign in with Google doesn't value your privacy, but sign in with Apple, they've got your back. That was just another one. There were 9 of them, obviously, so, yep. Other questions?
Any more? Going once, twice. Give it up for Richard, please. That was amazing.